Welcome to the Higher Self Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to help you unravel anything keeping you from a life of true abundance, joy, and happiness, which is your birthright. Each week, we'll bring in different guests specifically tailored to help you on your journey to discovering your higher self. Whether it's spirituality, business, finances, health, or relationships, there are no topics that are off limits. So get ready and enjoy this week's episode of The Higher Self. Welcome to this week's episode of The Higher Self. First episode here in our new studio / our new temporary house while the house is being built. And we've got an exciting guest today. I think we're going to get into a lot of different things. We might get some singing. We might talk some plant medicine. We might talk abundance. We might just talk all things life. How's that sound?
I love it.
Yeah?
I love it.
Vylana Marcus, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So let's start with this. Tell me about your background, because I know you've been wanting to be a singer for a while, or you are a singer. How did it all come to be? And then what I also want to know is, how did sitting with ayahuasca help to even develop that voice within you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, singing for me has been a lifelong story. I mean, I was a little baby, 4 years old, young girl, just like, I'm going to be, Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. And just like, it was always part of this like passionate fire that I had ever since I was a little girl. And I knew my whole life that I was going to be a singer. So I always sang, I was in choir, and I always knew it was what I was going to do, but just kind of like with, I'm sure many people who have these dreams that don't really feel like grounded or realistic. I ended up going to college as a backup plan, and I kind of like put all my ducks in a row. So if singing didn't work out, that I would be, I'd be okay. But eventually in my early 20s, I had an opportunity to go to LA and get into a recording studio for the first time and just work with some really world-renowned producers and people. And so I took that path where it was like, this is my dream. This is my vision. I want to be the next pop star, Christina Aguilera, like that whole idea. And then when I finally, experienced that vision that I always had for myself in the manifest, in the 3D, I realized that I really didn't know who I was at that point. And singing for me became less of this like passionate force of my life and more just feeling like I was kind of roboting my way through. Like, I'm capable of singing what they desire of me, but it doesn't really feel like there's any of my soul or my heart or my essence within it. And so I had to let that dream completely die. And I just fully stepped away from it. It was absolutely heartbreaking. But at the time I was not on any kind of spiritual path or, just really aware of how important grieving is, all the things that I do with processes these days. I just kind of like shut it out, turned away from it, and then just kept, trucking on and trying to go on a path of just self-exploration of like, who am I and why am I here? It kind of came around the same time that I was going through my Saturn return, which is, like a series of going through very painful, challenging, resistance-filled initiations, one of which being that my grandmother died within days of my birthday. And that was another thing that kind of expanded me open into like, what do I believe about life and existence? What do I believe about God? Like what am I here to do? I don't think that I'm just here because to just like live this complacent existence, making money to have things and experiences, which is all beautiful. But I just knew that like my heart had this yearning that there was just something more. And so in that death of my vision of this singing career and dream that I had, it created this space for me to, go on that deep inquiry, which ultimately guided me to my first plant medicine ceremony, which was with ayahuasca and wachuma and another medicine called vilca. And it's interesting because I wouldn't say, in that first ceremony that reawakened me to my voice. I think that the spiritual path that I really needed to explore of understanding who I was almost more important for me to focus on in that point. And, my first plant medicine ceremony, I still to this day can remember, every essence of feeling this visceral sense of understanding the meaning of life, not with words or thoughts or ideas, but just like, I understand. And I just, wept that day all day long, and had many experiences for years after that. And then eventually, as we do in our kind of personal evolution and spiritual path, when you're, having plant medicine ceremonies, you have these big expansive moments, and then everything that is not in resonance with that, is your integration process of how you really embody the gifts that you're given in those experiences. And I eventually got to a really, really low part of my life where nothing that I was doing was working. Like all the ceremonies, all the journaling, all the ho'oponopono, just bust out any of the tools that were in the tool bag, and nothing was helping me to transmute what I was going through at the time. And so that was the point where I very synchronistically found my way back to singing, and I started to tone again in the shower. One thing that I didn't share is when I stopped singing, when I let that dream die, I stopped singing entirely. Like I didn't sing in the shower. I didn't sing in the car. I didn't record videos of myself singing anymore. It was just like, that's not for me. I'm done with that. And, that's dead. So from going from my entire life, little girl, into my 20s, just like I'm a singer, and then not singing at all, there was a massive exiling and fracturing of my truest essence. And one of my greatest gifts and part of what I feel is, my inherent power and passion. And so fast forward to this point, and I started to sing again because it felt like it awakened something in me that felt really, it just felt really healing. And it felt like in moments where I didn't know how to move through something, I could connect with myself again, and synchronistically found my way to a training with my teacher, Dr. Paul Hubbard, in a particular modality called holographic sound healing. And, going through that course where it's ultimately, it's showing you how to work with sound in a multidimensional sense, and the way that you move through the body, through the 7 chakras, through the auric field, and, really channeling and being a transmission of the moment of another person's energy field. What are the frequencies and the vibrations and the tones that can bring them back into resonance? And so I did that course because I wanted to heal my own heart, and nothing else was working. Like I could do plant medicine every single day and none of it was working. And so, and I did, after I took that course, I spent a month in isolation, and I healed myself with crystal bowls and my own voice. And then that unlocked this,
or gave birth to.
It birthed. Yes, exactly. Yeah. It gave birth to the new vision of how I would use my voice, my most sacred gift, and the thing that I've always loved the most. And I could use it to heal people. And I started with doing it with myself. And since then, it's just been like quantum speeds of acceleration from, doing an album with Porangi and Liquid Bloom and my husband, to all of my sound healing music, to this album that I put out this last year, which is all about the empowerment of the divine feminine. And it just keeps, it's like I had to step off track, and that was so purposeful because of what happened in the space in between and who I became during that time, to then come forward into this like birthing of a new vision of like, this is what my voice is for. This is so sacred. And it's literally, I mean, if I could envision, you know, the entirety of my life, when I'm in a moment of doing a sound, you know, transmission for somebody, and the reciprocity that's happening where I get the gift, I receive the gift of helping to open and activate somebody's healing, you know, to inspire them to their greatest expression. Like, so many things happen in that space, and it's regenerative for me. It's invigorating for me. And it's funny to look back. I know this is a very long-winded answer to your question, but it's funny to look back at all of it, because all of it was purposeful.
Yeah.
I needed to go through that exactly the way that I did so that I could become who I was meant to become. And since I've been, you know, on this path of using my voice in this different way, where it's not like, I'm not trying to make it. I'm not trying to, you know, do what a label wants me to do so that I can get more listens. And, you know, if more people listen to my music, great. It's fucking healing, and it's empowering, and it's spiritual, and it's deep, and there's so much meaning behind it. But it's not what I'm doing it for. You know, I'm doing it because it's an expression of my soul, and it's what I have to give. And even if one person listens to it, it's worth it to me. And so, yeah, it's like I got to really birth through my voice into actually, you know, who I was meant to become. And that is still an unfolding every single day.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You know what? I resonate so much with practically everything you said. First, and this is the first thing I want to ask you about, is death. Because my journey began when my mother passed away. And I want to know your thoughts on this. I feel that for many of us, we have soul contracts with certain people in our lives. And, you know, when they go, it unlocks something in us.
Yeah.
Because I feel from you the same thing that happened to me. It's, you know, when my mom went, it was like very clear questions started to arise within me about my happiness, my joy, about what I was here to do, what life was, who God was.
Yeah.
And I was no longer interested in hearing someone else's answers.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I wanted to find them out for myself, because when I looked for someone else's answers, when it came to spirituality or who God was, or what God was, or for that matter, if you can even put God into a box called God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story. But when I started to look at that, there were parts of me that were able to poke holes in the story. You know what I mean? And the fact that I could even think about poking a hole into the story led me to the question, wait a minute, if I could poke one hole into the story, how many other holes are there? And then, is the story even real? Is the story even real? And if the story that I've been believing this entire time about God, about spirituality, about life, and therefore about myself and about you is not real, then what is real? And then that's what led me into my journey. And as I went down that journey, then I found out the truth about myself. And then when you find the truth about yourself, you find the truth about, like you said, is that there haven't been any accidents.
No.
Everything has been absolutely, purposefully, and perfectly been orchestrated to bring you to this moment and to bring you to this version of yourself. So that was a long-winded answer for me for this question is, you know, talk to me, you know, so many people, as I do that, I'm looking at my mom, those are her ashes right in between,
so
right in between. But as I think about that, and I think about death, and I think for so long, Vylana, I can remember my first ceremony. It was all about my control with death, and therefore with life, you know, and my inability to let go. And yet, you know, if you really look at it, we're not only infinite beings, but sometimes in order for us to find ourselves, a part of us has to die, you know? And so when you hear that word, talk to me about your relationship with that word, because I feel like so many of us are afraid of something that actually could be giving birth to something new.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, man, I could go so many directions with just speaking about death. I think the first one, because it was just arising for me as you were speaking, so it feels like it could be really potent, is, you know, talking about like the death of a loved one. And as you said, you expressed so eloquently, like the gift that is within it. You know, I always said, and at the time I was not as spiritually aware as I am now, with all of, you know, it just my life's path that I've been on. So I didn't really have the language or the tools or anything like that. But one thing that I felt when my grandma passed was like her life and her death were equally significant to my evolution, because when she died, exactly that inquiry that I went on, it completely set me on a path where I was never the same. My whole life prior to that moment was complacent, you know, in this machine of like, society says this is the way that it works, and da 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 da, and it was fine.
Yeah.
But there was no depth, there was no like expansion, and just like the richness of the full range of what it is to be human, light and dark. And when she died, I felt her always. I mean, I could close my eyes and go into a meditation and talk to her. And it was like a constant channel directly plugging into her as my guardian angel that I didn't even have the same kind of access to when she was alive, you know? So just to offer for people, you know, who are going through the grieving process of death, like grieving is so sacred because it is an expression of how much you loved something. Like grieving can be something, and I had a brother very young, very unexpectedly passed this year. And the depth to which I grieved was so immense because I am now, you know, so heart open without all the guarding and the shielding and everything. And what I could feel as I was grieving his death was like, thank you so much for the experience of knowing in my body with a gnosis how sacred life is and how sacred death is and how much death can be a teacher. And if you look at death as like this thing that you're so terrified of, you know, you're directly getting in the way of how much you can die things to then, you know, birth something new. It's like one of the themes in my album that I released this last year is called Goddess Rise. And it came to me through an ayahuasca ceremony that I had a very visceral experience of the Hindu goddess Kali Ma. And Kali Ma is like this wild feminine that is the devourer of delusion. Like if you have any, you know, ego delusion, like distorted ideas that are not serving your highest purpose, she comes in and just chops the head off of it. And it's like it's not like a soft and tender, like mothering process. It just gets right in there. And so because, you know, she was an ally for me expressing everything that came through in that album, the number of deaths that I had to go through during the process of birthing that creation was like, I mean, it was almost on a daily basis, you know, doses of deep humility to where my identity of, you know, feeling like I've got it together. Life is so good. I've done so much spiritual work, you know, in an ayahuasca ceremony, her just taking me deep into my shadow of things that I cannot see within myself and having to die all of these, you know, ego constructs and ideas of who I think I am or should be. And so the death, like, I mean, if you think of the body itself, we are constantly dying and regenerating into a new body, like every single second. For a woman who goes through her monthly cycles, like you are dying off what happened in your last cycle, energetically, emotionally, mentally, you know. So when you're in your moon cycle, which is such a terrible thing, how most people relate to that, like you're going through a death. And you have the physical manifestation of going through that death. And, you know, I feel like if we fear dying in any form, whether it's an identity, whether it's our actual physical life, whether it's, you know, somebody else dying, which that's like a big ask, you know, we're not really given tools for how to work with death in a healthy way. Most people, at least, it's very expansive being, you know, on a path with plant medicine, because the medicines take you head on into that.
100%.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, especially if you're doing ayahuasca,
right?
Like she's taking you down into the roots, into the depths, into the shadow to face off with everything that you're afraid of.
Yeah.
So if you have a fear of death, you know, she lovingly takes you into it, because ultimately, when you face it head on, what happens is you become liberated from the things that keep you so bound and contained and small, and gives you the wings to be able to fly and birth, you know, a new self out of that death process. But back to the point about like Kali and my album. Kali has this energy that is very much like the Hawaiian goddess Madame Pele. She's the goddess of the volcano. And if you just kind of like look at this as a symbol of death and birth, the volcano when it blows, it incinerates everything in its path. It is chaotic. It is messy. It is not kind or tender. It is just eviscerating. Just everything is dead. And yet, within days, it is giving birth to the richest new life. All of the islands that you see all over the world are a product of that process. That's a cycle of life. And we're so terrified of just staying the same, or we desire so much. I shouldn't say we, that's very vast. A lot of people, you know, oftentimes unconsciously desire so much to stay the same that they're not creating the space to birth that new life. Like, for instance, a good example is being in a relationship that is toxic, you know, not serving you, you know, volatile, like all the things. When you hang on to that relationship because you don't want to die that aspect of you that you know in that aspect of relationship, partnership, and love, you cannot create the space to call in something different.
Because we're afraid of that space.
Exactly.
We're afraid of the loneliness of that space.
And the mystery.
That's right.
We're afraid of not knowing.
That's right.
We're afraid of not being in control, to be like, tomorrow, this is what my day looks like.
I want to talk to you about that, because so many, I'd say 75% of our followers, listeners are women. I don't know how that happened. It just happened. Mm-hmm. And I'll post something on, you know, meeting an aligned masculine man, you know, somebody who can provide financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. And women everywhere are like, oh yeah, where's mine? But then it's sad to me, because most of the women will say something like, yeah, but where are all of them? With mm-hmm. like teary-eyed emoji. Mm-hmm. And it's, what I feel like saying is, it's that energy. That energy of where are they, or poor me that mm-hmm. I cannot find someone, is the very thing that is keeping you from finding a partner. Mm-hmm. And it's also a partner that you truly love and want to be with, but also it's that energy that is keeping you from finding your true power. Mm-hmm. Because if you knew who you really were, you would never utter the words.
Yeah.
But where are they?
Yeah.
But where are all the men like that? It's and it's just this incredible paradox in where human beings have been programmed to be in a constant state of fear, negativity, and victimization.
Victimization is the big one. Yeah.
Is what it is.
Because that's ultimately that's what I hear from what you're saying is it's the life is happening to me, not for me. I see all the struggle and the pain without the opportunity. Like there isn't a sense of empowerment coming through those words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I want to say is this: you don't know this, but you and Aubrey are a big part of me meeting my woman.
Oh.
We were in Sedona, Arizona, and I happened to be at a little bakery shop. Mm-hmm. This was like 2 years ago. And I had decided, I had just broken up with my ex, and I had decided, like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this messing around. I'm not going to go out and give my energy to everybody. I know what I want. And there's a calling in me. Like I know someone is coming for me, and I'm going to stand firm in that calling. Right. Anyhow, I walk up to this little bakery or this little, I don't know what it was. It was
probably Chocolatry.
Something. I don't know.
Sedona.
I don't know. But anyhow, I walk in and you walk in.
Really?
Yeah. And you walk in and I was like, oh, and there was just an aura about you. And right behind you, Aubrey walks in. I didn't know who any of you were. Back, I wasn't really hip to things or anything back then, right? And now I know it was right when you guys were like just dating, and then like,
that's probably right after we got engaged.
And then like, and then like next thing you know, you guys are engaged or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what happened that day. There was something about you guys that it was like this power and this, I don't know, this confidence. And I just had this thought. I thought, whatever that is, I want that. I thought that. Anyhow, I walk outside and my friend goes, hey, you know who that is? And I said, no, who's what? He's like, oh, that's Aubrey Marcus. And I guess his new girlfriend or whatever. And I go, oh, well, who is that? I didn't know any of this back then. But then, later on, I kind of start to understand. I moved to Austin. I start to kind of get it all. And I just wanted you to know that. I wanted you to know that it was a part of my story. And now I want to ask you, right? Because there's so many women out there that want to meet someone. Mm-hmm. And this truly is, it's like, it's one of those life's quests. It's like, I don't want to be alone. I want to meet with someone. And yet what I discovered was the very thing that led me to meet Jen was me loving and being comfortable enough with myself that I no longer needed someone. Right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the place that I really arrived to prior to coming into union with Aubrey. It was like I met myself to such an intimate, deep level where, I had mentioned earlier in this conversation that I spent a month in isolation in Sedona and fully isolated. No people, no technology. I mean, I listened to, music from a old phone. But it was just me and the earth. And I mean, go ahead.
Can I stop you for a moment?
Yes.
I want you guys to grasp the power in that. Because nowadays we can't go a minute without picking up our phone or needing something outside of us, right? We need alcohol, we need gossip, we need drama, we need technology, we need sports, we need entertainment, we need friends, we need. And what you did was the opposite of need.
Yeah, it was completely getting all distraction. And also not even just distraction, but there was nobody else's energy field around my field so that I could actually truly feel who I am. Like, what are the rhythms of my sleep? What delights me? Like, who are you when you don't have to be anything? I mean, it was one of the most profound things that I've ever done for myself in my life. And it actually came from a place of desperation. However, what I discovered was I am the same with people. I'm playful and I joke and I'm giggly. I talked to myself it was not a Vipassana. I talked to myself the entire time. I talked to the earth and I told her about my dreams. I talked to the house as I was turning off all the lights. Like, everything was alive for me. And just being in that level of deep communion and not needing anything. And I had some of the most profound moments of my life during that time where I would just be, climbed up, some hike up to a point where I could just look out at the red rocks in Sedona, and I just had my journal and I just had music, and I felt so completely fulfilled and happy that was like, this is my anchor. This is all I need. Everything else is a bonus. I literally, I'm sure at some point I could have done it for 2 more months easily and I would have been happy. But, I think having camaraderie and intimacy with other humans is super important. And to know that I could be so not even just okay in that kind of a space, but completely just fully expressed, having a blast every single day. That feels like this point where you are unfuckwithable.
That's right.
And, so having experiences like that where you're so deeply intimate with yourself, I think is really important, because if you are outsourcing all of your power to the external environment needs to validate that I am worthy of love, that I am beautiful, that I am this, that I am that, you're directly giving your power away to everything that is outside of you. So, really going into whatever kind of practice, if you just ask, universe, guide me to the thing, the practice, the tool, the retreat, the, person that can help me, whatever, so that I can really meet myself and heal all the ways that I don't feel good enough, that I feel unworthy. How can I be, this is something that I just recently did a podcast with my husband, Aubrey and Peter Crone. And one thing that he said is being in love. And when you think of those words, you think of, okay, well, with who? No, just, amazing. She knows what's up. She's like, this is important. We're going to drop in for a moment. But it's just being in love, in the state of love with self, with everything around you, with other humans, without holding judgment and all these distorted things that just get in the way of being in love. And, another aspect of how I think I made my way to Aubrey, because I will tell you, my history of relationships before this extraordinary man that I get to just crush it at life with was not that at all. It was cheating and betrayal and just feeling constantly gut punch annihilated in relationship and wanting it so bad and recognizing how much I was in that spiral of completely outsourcing love, all of my needs, instead of getting clear about what is my desire? What are my needs in relationship? And instead trying to chameleon myself into, well, they like this, so I'm going to do it this way, or this is their desire, so I'm just going to be so passive and, just show up to it in the way that's best for them. I had to have a bomb dropped into my life that exploded everything. So it got so bad till I got to the point where I just decided I cannot live life like this anymore. I am done with relating to love in this way where I just fully give myself away to another person's desires, needs of me. And I'm unhooking all of those attachments, and I'm getting so clear with myself. What are my needs? I need to feel safe with a man and I need to feel stability, because I've only been in unstable relationships, and I need that as a basic human need. And I am worthy of experiencing that. And if this is not that, it's not in alignment for me. And I love myself enough to walk away from something if it's not. I have desires of how I want to experience love. And it's not about I want, the guy that I want to look like this and have this much money. And it that was absolutely zero a part of my process in manifesting my relationship with my husband. And he turned out to be really extraordinary. So it ended up working out in ways, but even if there wasn't all of that material stuff, I don't care. Our love is so extraordinary that it blows through everything that we typically see as important in relationships. But what I got really clear about was how I wanted to feel. How I wanted to feel. I know through the contrast of all of my other relationships what I don't want to feel. I don't want to feel like somebody doesn't choose me. I don't want to feel like they're, I don't want to feel like so threatened because they're not like really, really actually devoted to me. I don't want to have somebody who gaslights me all the time and to like go into rage because I'm just, because they don't see me and they're not giving me the space to see myself. Like I know what I don't want. What I do want is I want to feel cherished. I want somebody who wants to deepen our love and intimacy, like, from here all the way down instead of expanding it out into, needing to have, this is just for me specifically. I'm not judging polyamory, but like that didn't work for me. I felt my nervous system was way too threatened. I was constantly in fight or flight. Energetically, it just felt like too much of an investment for me, and it didn't work for me. So it was kind of like, instead of expanding out, like love is infinite, absolutely.
Yeah, but
that idea in so many ways created a lot of spiritual bypassing for me. But I want to deepen love. I want to go deep into the tantric practices and learn how to use our sexual energy to manifest the world that we want to see and the life that we want to live and serve in all the ways that we can. I want, my partner to be aligned in my mission, I feel deeply from my heart, so that we're always looking at the same horizon. And we might have our own ways that we're doing it, but it's still ultimately facing and serving the same mission, which is, for the good of all, like to leave this world a better place than when we found it. All those types of things, down to the tiniest, like I always had this fantasy when I was in the kitchen washing dishes of like my partner coming up behind me and just holding me as I was doing that, just because that was the biggest fantasy that I would always come back to. I remember I even asked my former partner, like when we were in conflict, I just want you to come up behind me and hug me when I'm washing the dishes. And he's like, why don't you ask? And I'm like, I don't want to have to ask. Like, it was like so dramatic, but true.
Yeah.
I just
you shouldn't have to. That's just the outcome.
Connection for somebody to feel that like my love language is touched, and I want to be pet like I pet my cats, like So it was all of those things and getting so clear about it. And then at that point, I got to the point where I loved myself so much that I'm like, I know I'm good with me, and I think sometimes you can that can actually be a shadow where you're like, I'm good, I don't need anyone. And it's important to be discerning about when you're using that as a protective mechanism and when it's actually empowering. But I knew I was great with me, and I knew exactly how I wanted to experience love. And, maybe like you suggested, there was some part of me that knew that it was on its way. But I declared it to the universe. I mean, I wrote it out in my journal. I told my former partner, like, this is how I want to experience love, and I'm not asking for that from you, but like, this is my desire. And same as you, as you had expressed with Aubrey and I, at the time I had met the first couple where I actually realized there was never a model of a relationship that I wanted. Not in famous people, not in anyone around me, that I'm like, wow, I want that kind of love. It's possible.
For
right?
sure.
Once you believe it's possible, your belief field expands and you can see it and you can feel it and you can manifest it. So it was like all of those things. And then the other part about just being comfortable in the mystery. I don't know when this is going to come to me. I don't care. I don't care how he shows up. I don't care what he looks like. I trust that I am a vibrational match with the strength and the power of my desire, with how deeply and intimately I know myself, I know that this will come to me. And if that is, in the way that the universe sees as fit, and I'm just putting my hands up, but like, it's like that level of power and self-love and worthiness and willingness to not know, and then it showed up, and almost too fast. Like, it was like, I got so clear, and then it showed up, and I was like, wait, this is going to get messy. I need to, yeah. But I think all of those things are, really, really important. And so much of it is the journey with the self. I discovered through all of my former partnerships, like, there were gifts within all of that.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
As you were speaking, the greatest gift was knowing what you don't want.
You don't want. And also, like, if you're continuing to experience the same type of relationship, you are the common denominator.
Maybe it's you.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the common denominator. You are a vibrational match because there is some unresolved thing happening within you that you continue to attract these terrible situations, so that you can have the opportunity to heal, to, transmute the energy, to discover yourself within that and evolve and elevate out of it. Like, and in doing so, the other gift that was in all of those experiences, other than just the contrast of, I know 1000% entirely what I don't want in a man and love and all of that, was also like, it helped me to develop a particular set of skills and gifts and things that, my personal evolution and healing and what I learned through those relationships helped me to look people deeply in the eye, particularly women, and say, I see you, sister.
Yeah.
I know exactly what it is to feel fucking gutted. And like, you don't even think you can pick yourself up off the floor. And it feels lonely and it feels isolating and it's fucking brutal. But like, I can look women in the eye and I can say that. And I created art out of it. I transmuted it. The alchemy for me was I poured all of that pain, all of that rage, all of that grief, all of the healing and the empowerment. Like, I poured that into an album and a film for women to see, like, I am you, you are me, like turning that pain into passion and fire that creates something that actually changes the world. Like, there's so many gifts in everything. Everything is always happening for you, is really my perspective. And even if it sucks, like, so bad,
it's happening for you.
It's happening for you. I've had spans of time, back to the death conversation. Like, one of my songs on my album, which is kind of like the capstone of the album, is called Phoenix. And the lyrics of that song are, in the hook, are, I am. And that's all I ever need to be. And then I went to, and I'm so excited. It's this powerful transmission. I go to ayahuasca and she's like, oh yeah, you are, and that's all you ever need to be? Here's all the ways you're not living that in integrity.
Oh.
And it was like so confronting. Like, the shadow is not in awareness. It's very, very, very confronting, and went through like a massive death process. And I went through one of the, post that ceremony, I went through one of the most challenging, difficult month and a half of my life in my gorgeous, spectacular relationship where my husband is wonderful and holding space for all of it, and nothing is wrong in our partnership. But I'm just going through a moment where I had to connect to the rage of the feminine, the grief of the feminine, so many different things. And it's still like, those cycles still come through. Like, you're not going to get to the perfect relationship and then everything's just great.
For sure.
Like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, you still go through deaths that give birth to new life, to a new self, you continue to evolve. And if you can get comfortable with, being in those cycles and knowing that once you move through them, there's a sweetness afterwards that is so much better than before going through the death.
Yeah.
Like I would go through the entirety of my life again to experience like the joy and the radiance and my relationship and the beauty of birthing art into the world. Like I would do it all again because once I move through it, like it's so fucking worth it. And I continue to say, like, how many times can I say this? I will never be the same in the best way possible, and having more grace and tenderness with yourself in the process, and knowing that like shit gets messy and shit can be really tough. But like, if you can be tender with yourself in the process and find the people who can really like truly hold space for you as you go through it, like anything is possible.
That's right. That's right. I want to talk to you about something that I haven't spoken to anybody about on this show. And that's the polyamory. And never was a part of it. I can't speak about it. Never desired to. But I do want to talk about the energy of it. And this I'm going to speak about for men. Because for men, there's this constant story in our head where we want more, where we want multiple, and it's there. It's just part of the masculine energy.
Yeah, it's a penetrative force.
For sure, for sure.
Desires to penetrate the feminine, and that's just talking about polarity.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet, what I discovered in my relationship with Jen is that had to die in me in order for me to deepen my love with her. And it happened in such a powerful way where it was almost as if it was the thing that was keeping myself from fully giving myself in my most vulnerable way to her, to another person. I was scared of that. I was scared of that because I was scared of love. And I was scared of love that deep, which is what I always wanted.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how it all works out like that.
Yeah.
But when I was able to do that and I was able to finally say, oh my God, this is it. This is what it feels like. It was almost as if it was way more peaceful than I ever imagined it to be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you get this concept of love because you're so used to living life out here that when you finally understand what love really is, it's like nothing and everything all at once. And it's so peaceful and so beautiful. And there's no need. Yeah. It just is.
Yeah. And it sounds like you really died to the identity that the masculine is, or it sounded like in the death, you actually found peace.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And peace in choice.
Peace in choice.
Which is very masculine.
Yeah.
Peace in decision.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Because in many ways, it's also that energy of like indecisiveness versus just, this is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I'm about. This is my partner.
Well, and the beauty about, and I can speak to, as I mentioned, I was in a somewhat polyamorous situation before. And in that particular timeline, what I didn't feel was stability or safety. And what I can attest to being in relationship with my husband is like, what happens when a woman feels safe and stable, when a man is like deeply devoted to his queen, his partner, feeling safe and stable. And the union is like, it's the thing that's unfuckwithable. Like nothing comes in between that. What that can kind of open in a sense of like expansion is really fascinating. Because I think, you know, as you're saying for you, like it opened up this totally different life that you weren't existing in before, because you're like, you know, with your choice and your own authority, choosing devotion to one woman, and what that is expanding within your heart, within, you know, all of you. Like, it's like there's a code within that when I believe that there's like a sacred union code that just creates just a lot of expansion. And
it's crazy you say that, because I feel that. And I almost feel like it's like the deeper I go, the more everything expands. It's nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think like, I have something to share that, it's not, contrasting to what you're saying, because I think it's like very specific. Like, I don't speak from a place of feeling like, you know, everything is in general terms, like men are this way, women are this way. I do agree with the sense of like, the masculine principle of cosmos is, you know, line energy. It's the penetrative force. And I think for men, the desire to like, you know, you could say it like fuck life open, you know, creates like a lot of this energy. Like there's like so much energy resources to create, to manifest things, to build things, like the structure, like that's just part of the masculine principle. And with Aubrey and I, you know, we are in a sacred union marriage. You know, it's just him and I. And for the first 2.5 years, I went through a really, really deep healing process with plant medicine and in a lot of different ways, because for the first time in my life, the container was so safe and stable. I actually could deeply look at all of the things that were not really working for my truest expression anymore, because ultimately I did not trust the masculine, I did not trust the feminine, and I did not trust life. And because he was just that mountain, that masculine energy that could just like hold and not move no matter what it was that I needed to go through. And I knew that like, even though I don't have the capacity to fully trust him, because my wounding and my nervous system was just like, we're not there yet. You know, mentally, I really did. And I went through, you know, a really the biggest death rebirth of my life in an ayahuasca ceremony where I felt all my resentment towards life for not feeling safe and for all of the suffering that I've been in, for how lonely I felt all of my life. I went, you know, as Aya does, straight into all of the wounding. And then because I went into it, you know, was liberated and, you know, mostly in my nervous system of just the fight or flight I'd always been in. And so what opened for us, and I do not believe that it works this way for everybody, so I'm not suggesting for people to go on this path. I think that it just works for us. Something else that my ayahuasca ceremony unveiled for me was, you know, my own sort of unexpressed bisexuality that I have never felt safe to express, because the men that I've always been with did not feel secure and stable. And so that is actually something that in the context of our relationship in these really beautiful and sacred ways, you know, like we've had other, you know, we've had other partners in our intimate container that has been really, really expansive and really beautiful. And what I could say is like, you know, I think for most women, even that idea, which again, I'm not condoning, but even that idea feels terrifying. Or like, how could you, I get this a lot, like, how could you allow him to manipulate you into doing this or that when it's actually, it's like my desire of my fullest expression to explore. But what I've noticed in him is like, he is not like a hungry ghost that just needs, you know, to just like fuck everything that walks, or is just like insatiable. Like, okay, well, we had one experience, and so now like we need to do it all the time. Like that is not there at all. You know, like this is something that we experience together that is really, really beautiful and really powerful and really expansive and really intentional. And what I've seen within him that has been really beautiful is he feels like this aspect of himself expresses that, you know, he was the polyamory guy, you know, like he did that for a decade, did it very publicly and was like a big voice of living that way. And he could never transcend to a place where he felt like it actually worked for him. And so, you know, you could look at the contrast of going from that to being in a sacred union marriage with me. And it's like this part of him that desires to love the feminine, which has many faces. It's not only me. And yet, because I am his queen, if that is never something that is on the table, he bows down to that, and that is never on the table.
Yeah.
So it's like this, it's an interesting, I don't even want to use the word evolved, but it's like interesting how when you can feel this like safety and stability of devotion, you know, what then in its true essence can unfold, because this is as much, if not more for me, you know, than it is for him, and how our intimacy, like it's part of the way that our intimacy gets even deeper.
Yeah. And
he looks at me like with the most radiant, you know, fire heart eyes. That's just, our relationship just continues to expand and evolve. So it's like, I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think it's what really works for people. And are you in a container where you are, when you have great communication, when, you know, I think the really, really important key is that the feminine feels safe with the masculine, and vice versa. But I think because of the way that, you know, collective energies sort of exist right now, I think that is like a pillar that's really important. Then what are the conversations that, you know, maybe you deepen your intimacy in some way or another? Yeah. Because it's so, you know, like I'm going to be with him for the rest of my life. So I want to live that to the, you know, the greatest expression, and with the most, like my North Star is always to feel the most free. So what do I have to do to get there, right?
And you can't feel free without being able to express your truth.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And it's different than like having the conversation is having the conversation. You don't have to act on it.
Yeah.
You know, we had been in the conversation because our sexual intimacy is just like, I mean, the first time we were intimate, I bawled hysterically because I realized I had never been made love to before. Like really, like that. And there was a grief within that, and also a celebration, like, okay, I made it, like, great, we're here. And so something that I could feel from very early on is like, for women to be able to experience that level of integrity and presence and safety, like, it's a gift. It is such a gift. And like my, you know, open heart is just like, I want everyone to feel the way that I feel. It's so good. But and so we would just be open to having the conversations, and it was never acted upon until my nervous system felt like, okay, like I'm open to trying this. And then we did, and it was so gorgeous. And it's not like we're constantly doing that all the time, but when it has presented itself and it's felt really in alignment for us and we've experienced it, it's been so beautiful. And I feel, and the thing that's amazing about it is I feel so fucking free, like to be with my husband in that kind of an intimate space and just be like, there's no part of my body that feels contraction. I'm excited by his pleasure and his desire. And it's like, and we get to do that together. Like it feels like an evolved idea of what is possible in relationship. And again, I am not telling people that you should do this. If you told me to do this 4 years ago, I'd be like, fuck you.
You're crazy.
Hell no. Like you're crazy. You're being manipulated. I totally get that, those ideas and stories. So again, I'm not saying that this is the way that it should be, but it's like, if you take the time enough to tune into your own desire, and that was something that I went through too. It was like, I had a little ceremony that I did with myself, to feel into my body. Like I just imagined different scenarios, and it was like, okay, here's a brother of mine that I deeply, deeply trust, that I would, well, just from an energetic perspective, has done like enough work and is spiritually evolved enough that I would actually allow into my body, because I have done enough work trying to get energy out that I've welcomed in. So I trust him, love him. He's super attractive. What if we were intimate? It's like, my body doesn't feel excited by that. What if it was a random guy? I'm like, it could be fine, but my body's not excited by that. Like, what about like the tenderness and the softness about like loving the feminine? Like my body lights up by that. So it's like, I took the time to get clear enough about like what actually is my desire, instead of just being passive and going along with, what Aubrey might want. But typically I think when you're in a really beautiful relationship, like you can find some form of alignment in your desires, but everything was just open to discussion, and one thing that I think is, for anyone who's interested in exploring that, is like, he completely bows to what feels like it's in the most alignment for me. It's not like I have this desire, so just give me my desire, because now this container is open to expressing in different ways. It's not like that. It's like, does this feel alive and exciting for me and my body? And he literally has just handed over his pleasure and his eros to, that the power is entirely in my hands. And I think when you have that sense of power in a relationship, like, I don't want to abuse that power.
Sure.
Like there's so much, I don't know, I can't even find the word. It just feels like, wow, for somebody to give you that really truthfully, not just saying words, but knowing like, he may only ever be with me again. Or if I don't want to do, sex in a certain expression that he really enjoys, like, it's off the table. Like knowing that, like, wow,
it's okay.
Then that sense of safety is the masculine that creates the container for the feminine to thrive, for the feminine to discover herself in all of her expressions. And the funny thing that I have found with most very evolved women that I know is there is a love for loving the feminine. It's a different thing, not saying that's the way that it works. I don't think everybody is bisexual or, but it's just fascinating to see in all the women who I know in very safe relationships, it gets to a point where they actually have the desire to explore that. So I don't think it's a thing, but I find it fascinating and curious.
I love it. I love it.
So it took that a little bit of a different direction.
I wasn't expecting that, but that was awesome.
It's I just really feel like it's there's no one size fits all in relationship. And I think for some people, man, you have to be real spiritually evolved to like do it in a great way. But like for some people, even polyamory works. For some people,
I know it does.
Yeah. For some people, being in a three-way dynamic work, like there's so many different forms of relationship and partnership and sexuality. But like, are you being true entirely to you? Beyond all the fears, beyond all of the boxes and containers and ways people say that it should be, like, again, being so intimate with self that you actually know, like, what makes me feel most alive.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, thanks for watching this week's episode of The Higher Self. The reality is if you're watching this show, it's because you are searching for more, and you know deep within your heart and soul that there is more potential from your life. Maybe you desire true financial abundance and freedom. Maybe you desire to heal the fragmented parts of you. Or maybe you desire to attract the relationship of your dreams and be in a relationship with passion and true love. Whatever the case may be, that is what we specialize in. We specialize in helping you and guiding you to healing the fragmented parts of your life that have created these stories in your mind that keep you from living the life of your dreams. If you want to find out how we can guide you in that process, my mastermind Inner Circle does just that. It's a group of like-minded individuals that is wanting the absolute best out of life and will not settle for anything less. We get together 4 times a year in person and twice a month online. If you're in a place in your life where you're ready to discover your truest potential, then Inner Circle is for you. Message us the word Inner Circle right now on Instagram or Facebook at Danny Morel. Our team will message you back and begin to share with you the details about what it would take for you to join our Inner Circle. Message us the words Inner Circle right now. And you mentioned so many times the masculine and the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to you as a woman,
Mm-hmm.
how do you find balance in both of those within yourself?
Yeah. So I actually was speaking to this one time on a podcast with, I don't know if you know Christine Hassler and Stefano Sifandos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking about, I was talking about wanting to be more balanced in my masculine and feminine energy because I'm inherently very feminine. I mean, I'm sure you could tell even the way that I speak, it's very in circles. And I ultimately arrive, it's not linear and very precise. And anyways, so I was speaking to desiring to be more in balance with my masculine and feminine. And Steph asked, but does it need to be? And I paused and I just kind of let that settle for a second. And then I realized it actually doesn't necessarily need to be in perfect balance, right? I actually think that being in my partnership with my husband, his masculine presence is so strong and dominant, as well as my feminine presence. It's almost it's not like he completes me or anything like that, but there are aspects where his masculine can sort of step into things that I may need help, with my album, for instance. Marketing, I was the artist and the label, all these detailed logistical things. I had to put on a very masculine hat during that time, which drained me. It's, when I'm in the studio and I'm creating and I'm just singing and, anything that has to do with art, I'm so alive. And there's an aspect of, the masculine within me creating the container. I had the vision for how I wanted my film to be. We had to find the lighting. We had to find a set. We had to find, players to be in it. We had to find a person to body paint. There are some things that I needed to do to create the container. But overall, I feel a lot more comfortable expressing my feminine. But the way that I like to look at it, I don't intuitively sense that it needs to be something that needs to be in perfect balance. But for women per se who identify, or for anyone who identifies a lot with their feminine energy, the masculine energy within you is the part of you that creates the container to take action on your feminine. I could be creative all day long, but if I'm not acting on how do I get this out into the world in a way where I can share it with the most people, because it could be really helpful to the collective to listen to sound healings or listening to the empowering lyrics of my music. If I'm not in my masculine at all, that just is only for me always.
Yeah.
There's no part of me that actually takes the steps to act on it, put it out into the world. So there's all this wasted, beautiful, rich energy of the feminine and the Shakti energy, which exists within us all. The intuitive part of us that downloads I really feel in my heart and my desire and my knowing that I want to do this, but then you just sit with that and you never do anything about it at all. You're robbing the world of your gifts and your medicine, because there is always somebody to serve. There is always somebody who is 2 steps behind you that's looking for that next thing that could really help push them forward over this threshold that they have no idea what to do. And so, yeah, I don't feel like it needs to be balanced. However, it's really, really important to give energy to both and to develop, energy within both. I had a lot of, there were aspects of being the label for my music that I absolutely I didn't love, because sitting at a computer all day long and taking calls from the moment I wake up until, the end of the night, as I'm going through the creative process of still mixing and mastering the music, it was wearing so many hats, it just was so energetically taxing. However, I learned something about myself during that time. I have my life doula. Her name is Ellie Borges. I call her my life doula because assistant does not encompass what she does. She's so above and beyond. Life doula is the only thing that feels appropriate. So if any of you feel that way about the people who support you, I offer that to you because it feels much better than saying assistant. But with her, because she is supporting me, I have to be so clear about what I need. If I'm only in my feminine where I don't sit down and I have absolutely no structure, she can't help me at all. So it's been a really positive process. And I'm probably speaking more so to women who are not particularly skilled with being in their masculine, like you and Aubrey and, most men in the world. But I think it's really, really important to just understand that both are really, really, really important.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Shall we end with a song?
Yes. I'm trying to do both. All right.
Let's go.
All right.
Yeah.
Inviting you to close your eyes. Take a gentle breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Allowing your body to settle, to drop down into being supported by whatever surface is beneath you. And setting the intention that any of the topics discussed during this conversation, if any of them felt really relevant and resonant to your personal journey, saying a prayer, setting the intention that these sound vibrations anchor those codes within your body, attracting to you the very life that you desire in the perfect timing, in the most beautiful, synchronistic unfoldment. Si hay reino en mono, no hay mind, no hay querer. Si oni de niñalor, si exhaling, allowing yourself, your being, to land fully in your body, opening your eyes to the same room, the same space that you were in before, but feeling the subtlety of how you are different, with an expanded sense of love in your heart and truth in your sight. Blessings to your path. Aho.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. I want you all to really feel into what your body feels like after that. And if you weren't able to enjoy it in a quiet setting where you are able to either sit down or lay down, go back and do that again. Because these are the little gifts that, are presented to us, that when we become aware of our ability to heal and to feel peace and to feel calm by helping each other through each other's gifts, we get to go like, wow, life is pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was so potent. And I just love, this is us meeting for the first time, but just the reciprocity and everything it took for both of us to be here and to be able to have such a beautiful conversation that I think will be pretty impactful.
For sure. For sure. How do people get a hold of you or find you?
Yeah. So, if you want to follow me on social media, my Instagram is at Vylana. It's Vylana. I have a website, Vylana.com, that has everything that I'm up to, any offerings that I'm going to be having in the near future. It has all the information about my music and my film. If you're interested in sound healings, my YouTube is youtube.com/Vylana. I'll be putting up probably like a series of sound healings up over the next 6 months that I have some really epic ideas for. So yeah, those are the best ways to get a hold of me. If you're also interested in just doing, any deeper work, my husband and I have a community and sort of an initiatory container that we create called Fit for Service. You can find that at fitforservice.com. All of those offerings that we have. We have a big festival coming up in the beginning of November. It's called Arcadia, and it's a festival of a more beautiful world. So if you resonate with anything that I've been speaking to, we invite all of the speakers, the musicians who are just really aligned with shifting consciousness. And it's a really, really potent way to meet very like-minded individuals. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you
for sharing. And that was this week's episode of The Higher Self. I don't know if by the time this gets released when we're doing this, but either we had Awaken or we're having Awaken. And I look forward to seeing all of you at Awaken. Take care. Thanks for watching this week's episode of The Higher Self. If you heard something in this week's episode that caused you to think maybe, just maybe, there was a higher potential for your life, maybe there was a potential to earn and receive financial freedom, to attract the relationship of your dreams, or to improve your health, that's what we specialize in. We help wonderful human beings like yourself to unravel all of the limiting thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you've been living through so that you can finally tap into your life's truest potential. If you'd like to talk more about that, we invite you to join us on Instagram or Facebook and email us the word Discover More. And when my team sees that, they will reach out to you, send you the details of how we could help you on your pathway to a life of abundance, fulfillment, and creating the absolute life of your dreams. Message us right now the words Discover More now on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll see you soon.